Before I go any further, let me just say this. I know it sounds crazy, sounds insane, sounds impossible, and believe me, if I hadn't been there, hadn't seen everything I saw, I would say the same thing. I'm sending this out to the internet because it needs to be told. People need to be aware of what happened, and I don't think most of the reputable news sources would believe me. It started a couple of weeks ago on a Friday when my daughter got sick. Bad. Not anything too major or long-term, but bad enough that she couldn't hold food or liquid down for an entire day and was running a fever. Bad enough that her mother, my ex-wife, and I made the joint decision to take her into the hospital that night, to not wait to take her to see the pediatrician on Monday. Bad enough that after they triaged her, they decided to immediately admit her. It didn't take long for them to get her a room and get her hooked up to an IV, after which she fell asleep from exhaustion. Her mother and I were both staying, so we settled in as well. The hospital itself isn't a major one, just a small place for a small town, but it's always had a good reputation, or at least that's what I was told by the townspeople when we moved here. People in the surrounding area know they can get good care there, though major traumas and illnesses usually get shunted to a bigger city hospital about an hour away. That's what made what happened so surprising, at least the first thing that made it surprising. We had been there a couple of hours when it started. My daughter was asleep, and her mother had gone down to the vending machines to get something to eat when I heard a lot of noise and commotion in the hallway. I poked my head out and saw a team of doctors and nurses and EMTs and I don't know who else rushing down the corridor with a person, a man I think, on a stretcher. I heard a few snatches of conversation, something about shouldn't be bleeding like this and how did this happen? And one nurse, the same one who seemed to be assigned to my daughter's room, who said, shouldn't be here, we should send him somewhere else. But I couldn't get a good look at whoever was on that stretcher. Knowing what I know now, I'm glad I didn't. When she got back to the room, I told my ex-wife about what I saw and speculated as to what could have happened to that poor person on the stretcher. She wasn't that interested, and before long, both of us were settling back in for a long, uncomfortable night in the hospital. The only real positive about it was the nurse in charge of my daughter's room, the one who had said something about sending the man away. She was a friendly, middle-aged lady named Linda who told us she had grown up in the area, raised several kids of her own, and decided to become a nurse after they grew up because she loved taking care of kids. My daughter loved her because she was sweet and silly and very gentle, and because she had a rainbow jacket on over her scrubs that she called her happy coat. She told us it never failed to make even the sickest kids smile, and it sure worked on my daughter. Linda had come in and out several times to check on things and had always been bright and friendly, not only to my daughter, but to my ex and I. After the commotion in the hallway, however, something changed. The next time she came in, she looked flushed and didn't have her usual smile on her face. She did her checks like normal, but I could tell she was hurrying to get through to try and cover up something. I thought at first she was just anxious to get home and trying not to let it show. But then I realized it was fear she was hiding. Linda was afraid, and not just a little, but terrified. I asked if everything was okay, but she wouldn't meet my eyes and just answered yes in a very short and clipped tone. She told me that the hospital was mostly empty that evening and that she was only assigned 2 rooms, so hopefully she would be able to check in frequently. After she finished, she moved toward the door to leave, but stopped with her hand on the handle. I would advise you to stay in the room tonight and keep the door closed. We ask that you don't roam the halls as it could be disruptive to our other patients. With that, she went out and closed the door behind her, still never looking me in the eyes. I thought about what she said, and while it made sense in a way, I knew she wasn't telling me the whole story. Something was going on, and Linda was scared of it and trying to either hide it or maybe protect us from it. I remembered her comment as they brought the man in, and that only added to the mystery of what was going on. My ex had noticed the same thing I had, and we spent a few minutes talking about possible reasons to explain Linda's strange change in attitude. Eventually, though, Physical and mental fatigue got to be too much, and we both made an attempt at getting some sleep. My daughter had luckily slept through Linda coming in, so after tucking the blankets around her again, I leaned back in a reclining chair and shut my eyes. It didn't take long, and I drifted off into a surprisingly deep sleep, considering the less than comfortable circumstances. I woke up a few hours later, jumping up, suddenly wide awake for no immediately apparent reason. My heart was beating and I was hot and sweaty, but the strangest thing was the intense sense of dread and plain old-fashioned fear that I felt. I didn't know why, but I was terrified almost to the point of paralysis. I forced myself to breathe slowly and deeply to help stave off a panic attack, and I quickly looked around the room. My ex and my daughter were both still sleeping, and it didn't look like my movements had disturbed them. Everything else in the room looked the same, nothing out of place. That calmed me down some, and I decided that I must have been having a nightmare that caused me to wake up. I thought about hitting the button to call the nurse and ask for a glass of water to help cool myself down, but I didn't want to bother anyone. And besides, I heard movements out in the hall, so I assumed that they were doing rounds anyway. I decided to just poke my head out of the door and ask whoever I saw for the water. I paused with my hand on the door handle, thinking about Linda admonishing me earlier about staying in the room and keeping the door closed so as not to disturb anyone else. But I reasoned that they were already moving around out there, so I wouldn't be bothering anyone. Hoping to not get a lecture from an overworked nurse, I slowly turned the handle, opened the door, and stuck my head out. I first looked towards the nurse's station where I assumed someone would be, but it was empty. In fact, the hallway was empty as far as I could see in that direction. I turned and looked in the other direction and noticed something. The sounds that I had been hearing that I thought were in the hall were actually coming from one of the rooms. In fact, from the room that the severely injured man had been taken to. I took a few steps in that direction, trying to identify what I was hearing, when suddenly the door to the room slammed open so hard and so loud it echoed down the entire hallway. What happened next? Well, this is the part that sounds crazy. That makes me feel crazy every time I think about it. It's what has made me decide to leave this small town where I thought my daughter would grow up, and to take my ex-wife and daughter with me. I don't know where we'll go, but I'm not staying here. What happened next was something stepped into the hallway. It wasn't like anything I've ever seen. It was a man, had been a man, but it was twisted, turned, ruined. I can't don't have the words to describe what it was, how it moved, except that it was wrong in every way. Limbs too long, eyes too big, mouth too broad, but worse, so much worse and beyond worse. Before I could move or react, another abomination, another thing shambled into the hallway. This one was just as wrong and horrifying as the first, but even my stunned and quickly breaking mind identified the remnants of a rainbow jacket, a happy coat that draped what had formerly been Linda. I think that's what triggered my body to move, what triggered the moan of fear and revulsion, what triggered those things down the hall to snap their heads in my direction, to start to shamble, then lope down the hallway towards me, mouths open wide and teeth shining. I was able to slam the door closed and yell to my ex to grab something to help me hold it shut. I must have sounded convincing because she didn't argue with me. The next few hours are a blur. I remember stacking everything movable in that room against the door, hoping it would be enough, crying desperately every time something shoved against the door from outside, trying to push their way in. I remember my daughter in tears, not knowing what was going on, my futile attempts to calm her as the sounds outside the room got louder and louder. I remember finally hearing other voices, human voices, shouting, then the sound of gunshots and an unholy howl. Then finally a knock on the door, a policeman's calm voice telling us it was okay, we could come out. I didn't trust him until he sent a deputy to the window and we could see that he was human. That was a few weeks ago, and nothing has come out in any newspaper or radio or TV show or even on the internet. That's why I'm writing this. I did some research, and apparently there have been reports for a long time in this small town about creatures that attack hunters or others wandering in the woods and dark places, and what happens to those people if they don't die immediately. Supposedly they change into whatever the creature itself is. I guess Linda knew that, recognized the signs on the man they brought in, and tried to stop it. Failing that, she tried to keep me and my family safe the best way she could. I'll always be grateful for that, but it doesn't change my mind about leaving. You see, the gunshots I heard and the howl came when the police shot one of those creatures and managed to kill it. The other one, well, it got away. And ever since that night, I keep seeing something from the corner of my eye anytime I go out in my yard after dark, or anytime I'm coming back from the store or passing through a dark, shaded area. Something that looks wrong, that used to be human but isn't anymore. Something that I think now has my scent and is waiting for the right chance. Something wearing torn strips of a rainbow-colored happy coat. So this happened to me almost 7 years ago now. I should give some background info before getting into things. At the time this all happened, I was around 16 years old, and I had a friend I'll call Karen who was dating a boy named John. At this point in time, Karen and John had been dating for maybe 6 months, and after going out with Karen and John on many occasions, they decided that they wanted to hook me up with John's friend. We'll call him Cameron. At this point in time, I had met Cameron in person once. He was nice, so I gave him my social media, and we had chatted a couple of times. It's important to note he didn't have my number or know where I live. Now it's time for the story. Fast forward to one night, maybe a week or two after I met Cameron. I'm laying in bed. It's about 2 or 3 in the morning, and I get a call from an unknown number. Thinking, why the hell is an unknown number calling me at this time of night? I decide to answer it and see who it is. So I answer the phone and say hi, and a man responds saying hi back. Since I didn't recognize the voice on the other end, I asked the person who they are. Instead of giving me an answer to this question, the man on the line tells me to look outside my window. Thinking this is probably a prank call, I tell the man to F off and hang up the phone. Once I did this, the number calls back again. Didn't answer it. The person then proceeds to call me another 4 times until I finally answer the phone, which again I ask who the heck is calling. This time the person responds and tells me that one of my friends gave him my number and that I'm the guy he's been talking to. At this point, my stupid 16-year-old mind is trying to rationalize this, and the only person I can think of is Cameron. Before I can say anything to this person, he again tells me to look outside my window. He is outside, and I begin hearing noises outside my window. Now, I should mention that my room is right beside my parents' room, and being stupid, my first thought was that this fool was going to wake them up, and I'd never hear the end of it. Let me tell you, that thought soon turned into the last thing I would worry about that night. Anyway, at this point, I'm also starting to get creeped out. I'm thinking to myself, okay, if this is Cameron, and Karen did give him my number, how the hell would he know where I live? So I reply to the man and say, Cameron? The man says yes, and tells me to look out my window. I reply telling him to go home and hang up the phone again. Weirded out, I decide I'm going to get up and go into my basement and call Karen so that hopefully my parents don't hear me talking from my room. This is really important because to get to my basement, I have to pass a door that is partially made of glass. So I get downstairs and call Karen. She answers clearly half asleep. I tell Karen about the unknown call, which I'm assuming is from Cameron, and how he is telling me to look out my window because he is outside. And on top of this, that I can hear someone out there. Karen, now clearly awake, tells me she has never given Cameron my number or address and calls John quickly from her home phone to see if maybe he did. At this point, John answers and tells Karen that not only had he never given my information out, he is with Cameron. They tell me if someone is outside, I need to hang up and call the police immediately. So I hang the phone up, and before I can even go to dial for anyone, I get another call. Guess who? Unknown number. So I stupidly answer again, and before I get a word in, the man tells me that he knows I'm in my basement. He saw me walking by my back door. Now I'm clearly disturbed, as I did just walk by my back door to get downstairs, so I know someone is outside. Again, before I could say anything, the man tells me to come outside. So stupidly, I tell the person I'm calling the police and hang up the phone. Why I didn't call the police at this point, I really don't know. Probably because I was 16, stupid, and literally in panic mode. Not more than a minute later, I get another call. Unknown number. I answer again. The man then tells me to come outside or he's coming inside to get me. Clearly panicking at this point, I have this deep gut feeling that if I go outside, I'm never coming back. However, I do have to go by the door again to get back upstairs, and that was equally terrifying me. So I hang up the phone again and muster up the courage to run upstairs because the last place I wanted to be was in a part of my house no one else was in. I get more calls. Unknown number, unknown number, unknown number. Again, my 16-year-old stupidity answers. This time, the voice on the phone sounds shook and says to me that police stopped him outside my house and want to speak to me to make sure I know him. The phone then gets passed off to someone who identifies themselves by name with some title I no longer remember and asks if I know the man outside my address. He says my house number and street. I quickly tell the voice on the phone I don't have any idea who the person calling me is and hang up the phone. Never got another call again. However, I did sit there all night holding a bat and had problems sleeping for months. I should also mention, I don't have never many friends at this point in my life, and looking back on this night, I thought maybe this was a prank taken too far. However, I begged the few friends I did have for months to admit that one of them were the person who pulled this off, and to this day, they all insist none of them did this. So whatever got this person to stop calling me, thank God, and to the unknown caller, let's not meet.